The new generation of drivers isn't breaking from speed, they're breaking from fame. But what no one tells you is that this new fame has nothing to do with glory. It's about surveillance, pressure, abuse. Lewis Hamilton is sounding the alarm because what's destroying drivers today isn't the car, it's the crowd. In this video, you'll see why Formula One is becoming a machine that grinds down human beings and what that means for the future of the sport. Everything you're about to hear is based on real statements from Hamilton, recent experiences of drivers like Doohan, Tsunoda, and Dunne, and a breakdown the F1 broadcast will never show you. If you love this sport, you need to understand what it's doing to the people inside it, because today, the biggest danger is being seen. Let's start with Jack Doohan, dropped by Alpine, replaced by Franco Colapinto after just a handful of races. Colapinto crashes in qualifying. Harsh, maybe, but what came next? Pure mockery. A doctored screenshot of Mick Doohan, Jack's father, a 5-time world champion in MotoGP, edited with a sarcastic caption, very impressive. That post went viral. Not for insight, not for humor, but because it fed something darker. Jack's response, "Please stop harassing my family." I didn't think it would have to get to this point, but it did, because online abuse isn't just noise anymore. It's impact, and it's not just Doohan. Yuki Tsunoda, a fan favorite, a fighter, caught in a nothing incident with Colapinto in practice. And suddenly he's public enemy number 1 online. He tried to diffuse it. It's good that fans have energy, but use it better. That's code for Ahanan, stop treating us like machines with Instagram handles. And then there's Alex Dunne, just a kid, Formula 2, crashes at Monaco, opens his phone, and walks into a digital firing squad. He deleted social media off his phone entirely because it wasn't criticism, it was cruelty. You want raw honesty? That kid had to retreat from the world because people who claimed to love the sport decided his mistake gave them permission to attack his life. Let that sink in. Now we get to Lewis Hamilton. He's been through it all. Titles, scandals, booze, adoration. And still, he says today's F1 drivers face more pressure than ever before. When I got into the sport, it felt like being thrown into the deep end. But at least there wasn't the online stuff you could see, and that's significant. Let me tell you what that means. Back then, the pressure was between the white lines. Now it follows drivers into their hotels, their homes, their heads. It never shuts off. And what's worse, it's not just the fans, it's the environment. More races, more travel, more media demands, a 24-race calendar that chews through staff and drivers like expendable assets. There are probably even more demands on drivers today, outside the car, than ever before. It's not about physical stamina anymore. It's psychological resilience. You're not just driving an F1 car. You're performing for an audience that feels entitled to every thought, every word, every weakness. Here's what nobody says. You could be the fastest man on the grid and still be broken by the weight of expectation. It's happening right now. And the sport is pretending it's just part of the job, but it isn't. And Lewis, he sees it. He's praising the younger drivers for carrying that weight, but he's also warning us, wait, this isn't sustainable. The FIA issued a statement. F1, F2, F3 posted on Instagram. At the heart of it all, there are humans. That's a nice sentence, but words don't protect. Action does. Because if a driver crashes in Monaco and has to delete his identity just to breathe again, that's not racing, that's collapse. So let's call this what it is. Formula One is no longer just a sport, it's a content machine. And content demands perfection. And when perfection fails, the mob responds. We love underdogs until they underdeliver. We say we want raw personalities, but punish every outburst. Tsunoda screams on the radio, immature, Doohan's dad gets mocked. Fair game. Dunne crashes. Deserves the hate. Number, that's not passion. That's rot. And unless we fix it as fans, as a community, or we'll keep building a sport where the fastest drivers are the first ones broken. Hamilton's right. This is significant. And if we're not careful, the next generation of champions won't even want to race. Not because they're afraid of speed, but because they're afraid of us. Formula One used to be run by pirates. Now it's run by middle managers. But what no one tells you is that the real danger to the sport isn't on the track. It's in the boardroom. Christian Horner just exposed the quiet shift that's hollowing out F1 from the inside. And in this video, we're breaking down how the men who built this sport are being replaced by men who simply maintain it. With real quotes, historic context, and a behind-the-scenes look at what's changing, this is a no BS analysis of what Horner got right and why it matters. If you care about the soul of Formula One, you need to hear this before the next generation forgets what the sport used to be. Christian Horner isn't nostalgic. He's strategic, cold when he needs to be. But what he just said reveals a tectonic shift in how Formula One works. When I came into the sport, Horner said, it was Bernie Ecclestone, Max Mosley, Ron Dennis, Frank Williams, Jean Todt, Flavio Briatore, Eddie Jordan, big characters, entrepreneurs, builders. These men weren't hired. They built their teams from scratch. They didn't answer to a board. They were the board. They lived and died with their cars, with their budgets, with their reputations. Sure, they clashed. Ron Dennis and Jean Todt hated each other, but they shared one crucial thing: ownership. Fast forward to 2025, and most team principals are career managers. Safe, clean, well-spoken. But do they bleed for their team the way Frank Williams did? Do they have the same edge as Briatore, who could spot a driver and close a sponsor deal before breakfast? Do they command the paddock, or do they just represent the brand? That's what Horner is pointing to, and frankly, he's right. You look around the grid today, how many team principals actually built something? Toto Wolff? Yes. He owns a chunk of Mercedes. He's invested, cutthroat. But others, they're assets on a spreadsheet. Zach Brown, great marketer, great showman. But does he carry the soul of McLaren the way Ron did? And when Drive to Survive cuts to him saying he's a prick, is that leadership or performance art? Here's the dirty secret of modern Formula One. The real racing happens off the track. It happens in boardrooms, in Liberty Media briefings, in committee meetings with the FIA, and Horner knows that game better than anyone. He's survived internal coups, managed power struggles, clashed with the biggest names in F1, and walked out with more trophies than almost any other principal alive. What you see trackside is only 20% of the job, he says. The rest is politics, coordination, negotiation. He's not exaggerating. Being a team principal today is part CEO, part spin doctor, part politician. And in that landscape, it's no wonder the teams want managers. They're easier to control. They don't make headlines unless PR says so. They keep the shareholders happy. But here's the thing, you don't win championships with safe hands. You win them with vision, with fire, with someone willing to say, we're going to break the mold and maybe piss some people off doing it. That's what Horner represents, for better or worse. It's why Red Bull went from a mid-grid soft drink team to a dynasty that crushed the grid in two different eras. It's also why fans either love him or want to see him fall. Because Horner isn't just a team boss. He's a force of will. And that's what Formula One is slowly losing. We're trading authenticity for optics, replacing charisma with compliance, and eventually the paddock starts to feel sterile. The rivalries, manufactured, the press conferences, scripted. F1 used to be a collision of egos as much as it was cars. Now it's a branding exercise, The boardroom wins more than the garage. And if Horner's voice disappears, even if you hate the guy, the sport loses one of its last real pirates. Here's what nobody will say. Formula One was never supposed to be clean. It was political, chaotic, messy, loud. It was run by men who wore too much cologne and didn't care what anyone thought, and sure, they were flawed. Some of them were downright unlikable, but they mattered. Now, it feels like every new team boss is a LinkedIn executive with perfect hair and a corporate message. And if that's the future of Formula One, then don't be surprised when the sport starts to feel soulless. Christian Horner may be controversial, but he's not fake, and that alone makes him essential. So ask yourself this: when the next era begins, do you want a team boss who knows how to race, or someone who just knows how to manage a Zoom meeting? What if the most important return to Red Bull that has nothing to do with driving? What if the next era of Formula One dominance is being shaped behind closed doors by a name the sport had already said goodbye to? And what if I told you Sebastian Vettel isn't done with Formula One? No, he won't be racing again. But something much bigger might be unfolding. Something that could reshape the Red Bull empire from within without turning a single lap. Because behind the scenes, one of F1's most iconic champions is being considered for a job so powerful, so under the radar, most fans haven't even realized what's happening. This is the story of Red Bull's next evolution, of Helmut Marko, of Sebastian Vettel, and of the quiet battle over who controls the future of Formula One's most ruthless racing machine. Let's start with what we know. Sebastian Vettel, 4-time world champion, Red Bull's golden era driver, a man who rewrote the history books between 2010 and 2013. He walked away from F1 in 2022 after 2 tough years with Aston Martin, and he left with dignity. But even then, something didn't feel final. And now, in 2025, the whispers are becoming conversations. Vettel has confirmed, "I'm in talks with Red Bull, with Helmut, about something. In what form remains to be seen." Let's decode that. This isn't about a guest appearance. This isn't about media work. This is about leadership. And if you think it's just speculation, think again. Helmut Marko, Red Bull's notoriously blunt motorsport advisor, has already floated the idea of Vettel succeeding him. "That was my idea," Marko said, "but it's not ready for a decision." Translation: the wheels are turning, just not publicly. Let's be honest, this isn't a job offer, it's a power transfer in slow motion, and here's why it matters. Marko isn't just a talent scout, he's the architect of Red Bull's driver pipeline, the man who built the Verstappen era, and the enforcer who makes the brutal mid-season cuts nobody else will. Gasly, Albon, Kvyat, Lawson, Tsunoda, they've all felt the helmet effect. Replacing that role isn't just hiring someone to pick junior drivers, it's handing someone the sword. And Vettel, he's the only one who fits the mold key, because he's cut from the same ruthless cloth, but with a diplomatic edge that Red Bull desperately needs in this next phase. Here's where it gets interesting. Red Bull is entering a transition, whether they like it or not. Max Verstappen is still dominant, but the ecosystem around him is cracking. Perez is gone. The second seat is a revolving door. Helmut Marko is 82 and won't be around forever. And for the first time in years, McLaren, Mercedes, and Ferrari are catching up. Red Bull needs a new strategist, a leader who understands both eras, the chaos of youth development and the politics of a hybrid era paddock. Enter Sebastian Vettel. This isn't about nostalgia, this is about infrastructure. Vettel knows how Red Bull works. He knows how Ferrari fails. He knows the difference between nurturing and protecting talent, something Red Bull has never done particularly well. Just listen to how he talks about Marko. He's irreplaceable, Vettel says. You can learn a lot from him, but maybe it's not about replacing him, it's about adapting. That's not flattery, that's insight. Because Vettel isn't trying to be the next Marko. He's trying to be the first Vettel, someone who can take the structure Helmut built and modernize it. Less fear, more resilience, still fast, still ruthless, but human. And let's be brutally honest, Red Bull needs that now. Their driver academy is overflowing, but few are succeeding. Their culture is feared, but not respected, and their political game is being tested in ways it hasn't been since 2016. Vettel, as strange as it sounds, is the adult in the room, and maybe the only one who can preserve Red Bull's edge without burning the whole structure down. We're watching the early steps of something much bigger than people realize. Sebastian Vettel may not return to Formula One as a driver, but he might return as something far more powerful. The man who decides the future of Red Bull racing. Because when Helmut Marko finally steps away, someone has to control the pipeline, the decisions, the legacy. And Vettel isn't just available, he's ready. Think about that. The man who built Red Bull's first empire might just be the one to shape its next. And when that happens, F1 won't just be watching Red Bull, it'll be watching Vettel again.